Eyes are a beautiful and intricate part of the human body, and a surprising fact is that every person's eyes are completely unique. It's as if each eye contains its own separate universe. Many religious texts say that eyes are not just for seeing, but are the windows to the soul. They represent an identity that might live on even after the body's gone, taking on a new body. This is why eyes are often considered God's most mysterious and beautiful creation. Science, however, completely disagrees, seeing eyes as nothing more than a biological camera that sends images to the brain. According to science, human eyes are the result of millions of years of evolution, developing gradually through natural changes rather than being miraculously created all at once by a divine being. The debate between science and faith has been going on for centuries, but there's been no solid proof to fully support either side. There was a scientist named Yeun, though, who was determined to use science to disprove this belief. With his assistant Karen and lab partner Kenny, he was trying to understand the evolution of eyes. They wanted to figure out which creature first developed the ability to sense light. To do this, they were looking for a creature without eyes, but that still had the PAX6 gene, which is essential for eye development. Yeun believed that if he could find such a creature among the billions of species, he could genetically develop eyes in it. This would prove that eyes are the result of millions of years of evolution, not a single divine creation. Yeun's passion for science wasn't just limited to research papers. He was also fascinated by the beauty of eyes. Whenever he met someone new, his gaze would go straight to their eyes, and he would quickly take a picture of them. One Halloween night, amidst the noise, music, and colorful lights, Yeun noticed a girl sitting alone in a corner. She had a mask on that hid her face, but her eyes were completely exposed. Her eyes seemed otherworldly, full of color, mystery, and a kind of unspoken magic. Yeun was captivated.
Can I take a picture of your eyes?
She agreed, and he captured her magical eyes on camera. Not only were her eyes unique, but her words were also different, as if she was telling a story from another world. When Yeun asked her where she was from, she playfully replied,
"Another planet."
thinking it was a joke. Their conversation continued, and they quickly fell for each other. Soon they were in each other's arms, but Yeun still didn't know her name or understand the mysterious girl. As she was in his arms, smiling, tears were also streaming down her face. Yeun got a little nervous and asked if she would regret this in the morning. The sparkle in her eyes vanished. She got up and left without saying a word. Yeun ran outside but saw her driving away in a taxi. It felt like a beautiful dream that had disappeared in an instant. A few days passed, and Yeun got back to his work, trying to forget about the girl. One ordinary day, as Yeun was on his way to the lab, things started to get weird. He kept seeing the number 11 everywhere, on a store sign, a clock timer, a pattern of windows, and even the shape of a shadow. He even bought a lottery ticket with the number 11 on it, and the bus that arrived was also number 11. Yeun felt like the number 11 was trying to lead him somewhere. He got off the bus, lost in thought, and saw a reflection on the bus window. It was a picture of a pair of eyes on an advertisement board. They were the same beautiful, mysterious, and magical eyes he had seen on the girl on Halloween night. As soon as he got to the lab, Yeun searched the internet for the ad model and found the girl. Her name was Sophie Elizondo. Yeun's search for her now had a face. He dug for more details and found a picture of a cafe on her profile, which she captioned, "My favorite cafe." Yeun went to that cafe, hoping to see her, and waited for hours, but she never showed up. Disappointed, Yeun took the train home, but fate had another plan. He saw Sophie on the same train. It felt like his long search was finally over. Yeun followed her and hugged her tight, as if she was now his whole life. Sophie was happy to see him again, and they sat down in a cafe. Yeun finally asked her the question that had been on his mind since that night. Why did she leave so suddenly? Sophie explained that she had been alone for a long time and had no one in the world. But when she first met Yeun, she felt a strange sense of familiarity, as if they had a connection from a past life. This feeling had drawn her close to him. However, that night, Yeun had misunderstood her emotions, seeing her happy tears as regret, which made her leave. She now believed that fate had brought them back together for a reason, perhaps to fulfill an unfinished purpose. Their love grew, even though Sophie's world was completely different from Yeun's. Sophie was a spiritual person who believed in Hindu mythology, destiny, souls, and supernatural powers, all of which Yeun's scientific mind rejected. Despite this, there was something about Sophie, a mystery and depth, that drew Yeun to her. They would often argue for hours about souls, reincarnation, and God. Sophie would say that these things couldn't be understood scientifically, but had to be felt, and that faith had to be unshakable. Yeun's scientific mind saw it as nothing but superstition. He would dismiss her beliefs as childish because he didn't want to lose her. When their love reached its peak, Yeun proposed to Sophie, and she happily said yes. The next day, they went to the court.
We'd like to get married.
full of excitement and promises. Sophie was overjoyed, feeling like the universe was about to grant her greatest wish. The registrar took their application, but gave them a 24-hour waiting period, meaning they could only get married the next day. Sophie was crestfallen, not wanting to wait another moment, but Yeun held her hand and gently told her it was only 24 hours, and then they would be together forever. Just then, Yeun got a call from his lab assistant, Karen.
Found an origin species and we can build an eye from scratch.
Karen had some incredible news. They were close to succeeding in their mission because she had found the creature they were looking for. It was a creature with no eyes but with the PAX6 gene, which is necessary for eye evolution. The creature was an earthworm species called Icenia fetida. Yeun was so happy he was even more excited than he was about getting married. He immediately took Sophie to the lab. He introduced Sophie to Karen and then got lost in his research with Karen. Karen realized she should leave them alone and quietly went home. In a corner of the lab, Sophie watched the worms in the containers. With sad eyes and a taunting tone,
"Leave me every day to torture little worms."
she asked why he was messing with God's creation by being cruel to them. Yeun, a little annoyed, replied that he wasn't torturing them. He was trying to break the superstition of people who believe that eyes are a gift from God. He stated that things like the soul, fate, or any supernatural power were just imagination, and he would soon prove it with science. Sophie took a deep, disappointed breath, then smiled and said, "Yeun, if you can genetically modify these worms to have eyes, they'll start to sense light, right?" She continued, "Even if they don't fully understand it, they'll know that light is all around them." Yeun agreed with a nod. Sophie then got serious and asked, "So, Yeun, what if some humans have also developed a new sense, a spirit sense, that can feel souls or the invisible power that's always around us?" She suggested that just like the worms wouldn't understand the light, but could feel it, these people might not understand the power or soul, but could feel it. "Think about it, Yeun," she went on. "We are much more developed than this creature. Light is a common thing for us, but this creature was blind before. It wasn't aware of light or our existence. It was confined to its own world, but you genetically modified it, allowing it to feel a new kind of energy. So couldn't it be possible that there's someone above us who has developed new senses in some humans, allowing them to feel souls and supernatural powers?" Yeun looked at Sophie, confused. He now understood that the spiritual beliefs he thought were her childishness were actually the foundation of her life, something he couldn't change. He realized the huge difference in their ways of thinking and began to fear that he had rushed into the decision to marry her. Seeing his confusion, Sophie stopped the argument and started showing him affection. By accident, some chemicals fell into Yeun's eyes and they began to burn.
Call Karen! Fucking call Karen now!
Luckily, Sophie got Karen in time, and Karen saved Yeun from going blind. However, it would take 12 hours for his eyes to fully recover, and for now, his vision was blurry. Sophie took Yeun to her apartment to take care of him. On their way up in the elevator, Sophie was lovingly showing her concern, but Yeun was still thinking about his decision to marry her.
So what?
Suddenly, the elevator stopped between floors. Yeun panicked because there was no one to help and no phone signal. Sophie, however, was joking around like a child, which frustrated Yeun even more. She taunted him, asking if he wanted her to call Karen for help. Yeun was furious at her taunt and was about to say something when the elevator suddenly began to fall at full speed. It then stopped with a jolt. Sophie was terrified, shaking and crying in a corner. Yeun gathered himself and took off his eye bandages. Although his vision was still blurry, he tried to open the elevator door. When the door opened, he saw that the elevator was stuck halfway up to the next floor. There was a narrow space to get out. Yeun decided he would send Sophie up first, but Sophie, with a trembling voice,
No, you go first and you pull me up.
Yeun climbed up quickly and then started pulling Sophie up. Just then, the elevator suddenly fell all the way down. Yeun pulled Sophie with all his might and held her in his arms. They were both out of the elevator and smiled at each other for a moment. Yeun closed his eyes and took a breath of relief, but then he noticed that Sophie was completely silent. When he opened his eyes and looked at her, his heart dropped. Sophie had only made it halfway out of the elevator. The lower half of her body was crushed inside, and blood was flowing on the floor. That night, which could have been the happiest of his life, became the deepest wound on his soul. He respectfully performed Sophie's final rites. Yeun, who had always denied the existence of God, souls, and supernatural powers, was now praying for a miracle to bring his Sophie back. Sophie's death had pushed Yeun into a darkness of sadness and regret, from which there seemed to be no escape. He slowly began to lose himself, reaching the final stage of grief where a person still breathes but has lost the purpose of living. But in that deep darkness, a ray of hope appeared. It was Karen, who had been his research partner and was now his confidant. Karen not only stood by him, but also gave him the comfort and love that brought his broken soul back to life. 7 years passed. Yeun and Karen were now married. Karen was about to become a mother, and Yeun had reached a historic milestone in his research. He had successfully given eyes to the worms through genetic mutation. This meant he had reached the first step of evolution, where eyes began to develop. Yeun even wrote a book called The Complete Eye that challenged the beliefs of religious people. In the book, Yeun proved that eyes are not a divine creation, but the result of evolution. He became famous all over the world. Although his life had changed and happiness was knocking at his door, the pain of losing Sophie was still with him. He would try to forget her, but her eyes or her scent would appear, reminding him of Sophie. But then the day came when Karen gave birth to a son. Yeun decided to forget his past for good and live happily with his wife and son. They named their son Tobias. At the hospital, as baby Tobias was crying, a doctor came in. She wanted to scan Tobias's iris for his identity proof and asked for Yeun and Karen's permission. After they agreed, the doctor scanned Tobias's eyes, and the identity of an old man named Paul Edgar Derry appeared on the computer. It was strange that Tobias's eyes matched Paul Edgar Derry's identity. The doctor thought it was a system error, so she rebooted the software and filled in Tobias's information. A few months passed, and Yeun got a call from a doctor named Simmons, who worked at a research lab. She said she was affiliated with the Greenwich Hospital where Tobias was born. She informed him that they had found symptoms of child autism in Tobias. Child autism is a brain disorder that a child is born with, which can make them weak in talking, understanding emotions, and socializing with others. To check if Tobias had autism, the doctor asked Yeun and Karen to bring him to the clinic. They went to the clinic right away, where the doctor performed a special test on Tobias. Tobias was placed in an empty room and shown 2 images side by side, one after another. Yeun and Karen watched from outside and, within a few minutes, noticed something shocking. The baby, who couldn't even recognize his own parents yet, was reacting to certain images and showing different emotions, as if they were familiar to him. When he saw a dairy farm image, he smiled. When he saw a restaurant image, he got excited. When he was shown 2 different dogs, he laughed at one of them. And when he saw 2 women, he cried at the sight of one of them. Yeun and Karen couldn't handle the test anymore and took their child home immediately. At home, they were worried about the test results. They had figured out that it wasn't an autism test, but some kind of secret test. They wondered why Tobias was reacting to those specific images as if he had a connection to them. Karen searched the name of the restaurant, Dennis's Diner, from one of the images on Google and found that it was a real restaurant in Boise, Idaho. Yeun and Karen wondered if the other images shown to Tobias were also connected to Boise. To find the truth, Yeun immediately left for Boise. After a long flight, he reached the restaurant. He casually asked the owner if there were any good places to visit. The owner smiled and said he might be in the wrong place, as there was only a dairy farm nearby.
There's a dairy farm.
The mention of a dairy farm shocked Yeun because one of the images shown to Tobias was of a dairy farm. Yeun got the address of the farm from the owner and went there. What he saw there completely blew his mind. The dog Tobias had laughed at was there, and it belonged to the same lady Tobias had cried at. The information Yeun received after this made him feel like the ground was slipping from under his feet. The dairy farm wasn't a dairy farm, but a meat farm. And Derry was the last name of the lady's deceased husband. The husband's name was Paul Edgar Derry. Paul Edgar Derry, the same name that had appeared when Tobias's iris was scanned for his identity card. Yeun returned and told Karen everything. Karen was also shocked and called it a strange coincidence. Paul Edgar Derry had died in September 2012, and Tobias was born just 10 months later in July. Tobias's eye pattern matched Paul's, even though the iris pattern is unique for every human, and it's impossible for them to be the same. And the strangest thing was that Tobias was reacting to images of Paul's house and family as if he had a connection to them. All these clues were pointing in one direction, toward a truth that was beyond science. Could Tobias be Paul's reincarnation? Was it true what religious scriptures had been saying for centuries, that eyes are the windows to the soul, and they don't die with the body but are born in another body? These questions were rattling Yeun and Karen from within, but their scientific minds refused to believe it. To get to the bottom of this mystery, they sought help from their friend Kenny. Kenny's company worked on an advanced biometric system that had the biometric data of people's eyes from all over the world. Although Kenny didn't have full access to the data, he could scan anyone's eye and find out when and where that eye was registered for the first time. For example, when Kenny put Yeun's eye image in the system, it showed that Yeun's eyes were first registered in his lab in 2005. The result was accurate. Then Yeun and Karen gave Kenny the images of their deceased parents' eyes. The system showed that Yeun's father's eyes were registered in Heathrow in 2006. Yeun confirmed that his father had gone to Heathrow in 2006, and this result was also accurate. They checked the eyes of other deceased friends and relatives, but no one had a connection like Tobias and Paul. No dead person's eyes matched a living person's eyes.
So anybody else?
Sophie.
Kenny put Sophie's eye image in the system. The system showed that Sophie's eyes were last scanned in the city of Delhi, India. Karen and Kenny stared at Yeun in shock, but Yeun said there was nothing to be surprised about. He said that Sophie believed in Hindu mythology, so she might have gone to India and had her eyes scanned at the airport. But what Yeun saw next completely shocked him. Sophie's eyes were scanned just 3 months ago at the Okla Community Center in Delhi. This was impossible because Sophie had died 7 years ago. Yeun couldn't believe it and said it must be an error,
It's only the seventh one we tried.
which was enough reason to trust it. All this information was screaming at Yeun that Sophie might have also been reincarnated 7 seas away in the city of Delhi, India. Just like some of Paul's memories had remained within Tobias, a child might exist in Delhi in whose eyes Sophie's presence was still alive with the same feeling and mystery. However, Yeun didn't want to believe any of this. He wanted to forget his past, but Karen knew that Yeun would never be able to forget Sophie. The regret of her death was still in his heart. Karen told Yeun to go to Delhi himself so that if Sophie was there in some form, Yeun could meet her and unburden his heart. She explained to Yeun that if he really found a new form of Sophie, whose mind and memories were still connected to her, it would be a great discovery in history. Karen's words gave Yeun a new confidence. He left for Delhi the next morning, not to get his Sophie back, but as a researcher. In Delhi, he reached the Okla Children Community Center. He saw that children's Aadhaar cards were being made for which their biometrics, including their eyes, were being taken. There, Yeun met Priya Verma, who ran an NGO for poor orphan children and provided them with education. Yeun showed Priya a photo of Sophie's eyes and told her he was looking for someone with eyes like that. These were eyes that no one could forget.
Why are you looking for her? Is she in some kind of trouble?
Yeun smiled and said no, she hadn't done anything wrong. She was very special to him. He asked if she could tell him where to find her, and Priya said the girl's name was Salamina. She was a very sweet child who used to come there, but Priya hadn't seen her in a month. Yeun pleaded with Priya to help him find Salamina, and Priya agreed. They went to a slum near the Okla vegetable market where Salamina used to live. There they found out that Salamina's parents had died a few months ago, and she had been missing ever since. Yeun became anxious, thinking about where the poor, helpless girl might be wandering. Finding her in a labyrinth like Delhi seemed impossible, but he didn't give up and came up with a plan. He had a picture of Sophie's eyes printed on an advertisement board with a message saying that if anyone found a girl with those eyes, they should contact him for a reward. For days, Yeun would sit near that board, waiting for someone to bring Salamina to him. But after many days of waiting, Salamina was not found, and Yeun lost hope. He decided to go back to his country, but on that same day, he saw someone. A girl was standing in front of the ad board, looking at it. She had the same beautiful, colorful, mysterious eyes that Yeun had gotten lost in.
What's your name?
Salamina.
And Yeun felt like he had found the whole world. He brought her to his hotel room. Salamina was hungry, so Yeun lovingly fed her and introduced her to Karen through a video call. But the real test was yet to come, the one that would determine if Salamina had any connection to Sophie. Yeun and Karen gave Salamina a test, showing her some images and asking her to choose her favorites. If all the images she chose were connected to Sophie, it would be proof of reincarnation that would shake the foundation of science. But unfortunately, that didn't happen. Salamina only chose 44% of the images correctly, which was probably just a guess. Salamina had failed the test, and Yeun was disappointed. He was about to take the helpless girl back to Priya when something strange happened. As soon as the elevator door opened, Salamina got scared. Yeun was stunned. For a child who probably had never seen an elevator, her sudden fear of it was repeating a familiar story. Sophie had died in an elevator. Could this fear of elevators have come to Salamina from Sophia? Was Salamina truly Sophie's reincarnation? Finding proof of this might have been impossible, but Yeun, who once set out to defeat faith with science, had now embraced a belief. No matter what the world said, for him, Salamina was his Sophie. He had found Sophie, not as a life partner, but as a daughter. Yeun picked up Salamina and took her with him, and that's where the movie ends. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.